Hi, my name is Soile, and you're listening to Heartland, a fan podcast from a fan perspective. Welcome back to the podcast. We're here to talk about episode 6, so let's get started with your comments. The Miller Manor said, "Wow, what an episode. Favorite of the season for sure, at least so far. They really packed a lot of important moments into it. I haven't quite figured out where things are going yet with Caleb. I do hope they don't write him out because I hate it when characters from the early seasons leave. I really enjoyed the Nathan Amy banter and awkward moments. Looking forward to seeing how things progress, especially now that we've been reassured of where his heart in the business is. Intrigued by his past too. I also cracked up at how Molly and Amy couldn't get enough of each other. Did anyone else notice? Amber's love for animals was oozing out through Amy. And seeing Jack and Lisa having some new experiences together that bring them closer is something I'm more than happy to see. Way to go, Lisa, for kicking butt in the pool, all for her love of Jack. What a fun way to tie in their separate pasts and their present and future together. Proud of Katie standing up for herself in the end, and that she's trying new things and breaking the horse-focused mold. Although the mom part of me is not thrilled about the behind mom's back part. Of course, it does make for good drama. I kind of feel like Katie is a whole lot more similar to her mom than either of them realize, though. I do wonder if Parker will ever come back into the picture for more than a brief scene here and there. I miss Katie having a BFF, and I miss that for Amy and Lou too. I know it was ages ago, but I still feel like having Marnie and Soraya was really good for Lou and Amy. It obviously has kind of forced them to depend more on each other as sisters, which can be a good thing. And also, it's kept their scenes more focused on their careers and relationships with their kids and others at Heartland. But there's something special about a girl and her BFF, and especially after this episode, Caleb does not quite fit that bill for Amy, even though they are good longtime friends. With all the difficult, emotional, roller coaster moments for Amy in this episode, I felt like she needed her sister or BFF for a shoulder to cry on, or at least have an encouraging phone call slash text with. And lastly, their new DB this season has really added some beautiful elements to the already incredible well shot series. I've always thought highly of their camera work. That's my background, schooling wise, and it's hard to believe, but now I love it even more. Then, no context, Heartland said, Michelle collecting yet another great episode for her directing portfolio. I wish we would have had Lou, Tim, Jessica, etc. in this episode, but they managed to fill it out nicely even without them. Jack and Lisa's plot for the episode was great. I was fully cackling alone in my living room when she was kicking that guy's ass at pool. And I was surprised by the fact that I didn't hate the Caleb slash Amy thing we all knew was going to be addressed this episode. They're greatest friends, and I'm really glad that they wrapped up the arc and ended in a healthy place with their friendship and no questions left unanswered. The standout for me this episode was Katie's lot. Seeing her finally stand up to Ellie after a handful of episodes of putting up with her attitude was wonderful. I like that Brandon came back in the end to apologize for her behavior, but I hope we get further resolution on that whole situation if Ellie's going to continue to be around. Then Selden said, I'm disappointed with what happened with Caleb, especially because it wasn't the first time. It felt like a cheap storytelling. I've never understood why this show doesn't value friendships. The situation was still solved beautifully, in my opinion. Then 1979 Walnut said, It looks like Nathan won't be trouble for the Heartland family. He's very supportive of family ranching like Heartland from being pushed out by big business factory ranching. I believe in the end he will join forces with Heartland to fight big business factory ranching that is trying to run the small family ranch out of business. We also see Amy may love Caleb as a friend, but will never be in love with him in a romantic way. I also think the writers didn't want Amy getting romantically involved with Caleb because of him being too close of a friend of Ty. The writers want Amy to move on from Ty while Caleb will always keep Ty in the picture. I also have some suspicions about Caleb staying in Hudson. Have to wait until episode 8 to find out what Caleb decides to do. Amy appears to be drawn and attracted to Nathan and doesn't realize it. Nathan appears to be interested in Amy, but he may be too shy to make a move, and I think Amy will make the first move, maybe with Lindy showing some interest in Nathan. The Jack and Lisa story was nice, and Lisa got Jack to live a little and have some fun. Lisa also showed Jack there was another side of her that he didn't know about with being good with pool, and in the end, Dan did have something to do with Jack getting his buckle back. I like how the writers are showing that Katie is strong in her own way and won't be pressured by her friends. Brandon is turning out to be nice to Katie, while Ellie, I think, will give more trouble for Katie. Seems like Katie is moving on from Parker with the line that Parker has drifted out of Katie's life and we may not see much of Parker anymore. The story chemist said, one of the most enjoyable episodes and best of the season. Now I get what they meant by being adventurous. It was more Lisa wanting to make sure they don't let life pass them by. Amazing Jack and Lisa storyline this one, that also included Dan, in a way. While Lisa wanted to be adventurous, she only encouraged Jack to play the game because she knew how much the buckle meant to him, and also slyly she knew eventually she would get it by renegotiating terms with her as the ace in the hole. What a lady. Jack and Lisa out of the house scenes were fantastic. Hope they give us more. It was refreshing. The subtle mannerisms of both Jack and Lisa during scenes are phenomenal. If Jack ever takes part in a rodeo competition and Lisa isn't there, I will be upset. We all know she would love to be there to support Jack and to see him in his element. She would move mountains to see him in a rodeo, and if the writers don't know that, please fire them. LOL. A few things to note. I thought Dan's funeral was in Florida, 40-hour plus drive. They didn't fly because we see they got in Jack's truck at the cemetery. Also, Brayburn is 7 to 8 hours from Calgary. It's not a day trip, unless I'm mistaken. Loved all the scenes with Nathan. He's got that it factor of wanting to see more of him and know more about him. Amy and Caleb were awkward, but that's life. I'm glad they showed it and now trying to move forward. Katie was awesome, finally setting boundaries and staying true to herself. That's brave for a teenager to do, to not let peer pressure take control of her actions. Buzzing with this episode, Jack and Lisa hit it out of the park with great scenes, stealing the episode just like last week. Man, they can act. They have great chemistry as actors that makes them so believable. Wish we could all find our talent and be so lucky to express it the way these two actors do. To which Smoking Holsters replied, Brayburn is actually in the Yukon, 20 hours away, but there's a sign at the rodeo that names the town as Brayburn, so it's fictitious. Then Sharon said, Lisa Bullshock Stillman, you go girl. Love how she pushes Jack out of his negativity of doing nothing new. Hopefully Jack will stop saying no to every suggestion and live a little. Interesting how we learn of their financial difficulties in the early years. Katie, so glad stood up for herself and not be dictated by peer pressure. She's her own person and is learning to understand what she wants. I like that Brandon came back and that he opened up about himself. Definite sparks there. As for Ellie, she'll learn in time about her attitude. We'll see that in the next episode. Amy/Caleb. We all knew it was one-sided, but at least they both declared how they feel and finished the storyline on a good note. Amy/Nathan. There's definitely something there. Looks like there is more to him than being a cow rancher. I loved how they both looked at each other with interest. Looking forward to their next step. This episode flowed really well. The horse work was great to watch. As usual, Michelle knocked it out of the park. Not just the animal work, but the actors' performances. Waiting for next episode when hopefully we'll find out what has been troubling Lou. Sad that there are only 4 episodes left. This was definitely a season where more episodes were needed. Then Dip said, I'm enjoying Katie's coming of age story. It is normal for a teenager to bristle against parental authority, and it is here that we see that Bartlett genes are very strong. She has inherited Gigi's independence and stubbornness just like her mom did. However, when I watch Katie interact with her peers, I see Peter. She has his easygoing personality and self-control. I see a bit of Tim in her as well. They are both sneaky, and I can see them conspiring together again in the future. The ultimate final girl said, I like seeing more and more of Nathan. I like him the best this season. Caleb made me mad. LOL. Then Smoking Holster said, I'm pretty pissed off at this stage, which really ruined this episode for me. I'll get to it in the moment. I love Katie at this point, and I'm glad she stood up to the pressure. To me, it would have been more realistic for Eleanor to go for a beer from the fridge rather than whiskey from the cabinet, but whatever. Glad Brandon came back and they talked. Yes, Jack, people go to pubs and eat lunch at them in the middle of the afternoon, and they do it especially after attending a funeral. It was fun to know that after at least 17 years, Lisa still got it as a pool shark. Or sharp, take your pick. And can beat a guy who I'll wager plays every day and who claims to have won championships. And no, I still don't believe that Jack or Lisa can two-step since they're doing rather well at it several times before season 17. WTF is up with the writers. When are they going to stop manhandling the woman on this show? I know, just a kiss. Well, no. Fuck that, because Ahmed was just a kiss and Jace was just a kiss, and it was wrong then, and it's wrong in 2023 and season 17. Maybe even more wrong now. Seriously, a guy convinces himself that there's something there, stalks her hours away to a rodeo, and decides that what he should do after 17 years is just kiss her. It's all cringe, and it really pisses me off that this is what they came up with. They couldn't have a talk. This was the grand romantic Amy/Caleb scene, about as romantic and certainly as wrong as he's kissing Lou. And of course, she just forgives him because without that, she'd literally have no friends at all. And of course, the friend she needs is Caleb. He comes cheap, and I guess it's easy to fit an idiot into a story. Then Angel Horses said, this was a good episode, but it did feel a bit empty without Tim or Lou. I'm also glad we are picking up right where we left off in the previous episode. I'm loving Jack and Lisa's storylines this season. I'm glad we still get to hear more about the good times with Dan. I was actually surprised they even showed a bit of the funeral, even if it wasn't actually the funeral. I thought they were just going to skip the whole thing, but I kind of wish we would have seen it. A little thing I noticed is that they still take Jack's truck to events. Nice little continuity tidbit there. I love them going to the bar and dancing, and Lisa totally schooling Devon in pool. I was living for it. I also love to see them dancing. We've seen a decent amount of dancing between them this season. When was the last time we saw this much? I think they danced in the background last season, but the earliest before that I can remember is season 9 at Lou's award event. Also, Jack had some very sweet lines this episode. I actually really enjoyed Amy's storyline for the most part. I love seeing more Nathan, but I really wish we would get more of his past. I think we will get it eventually, but he just doesn't want to talk about it, and that has me intrigued. I really like his and Amy's scenes while driving. I did really feel for Amy this episode because everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And you could just feel the awkwardness and embarrassment she was feeling between the party and not doing good initially in the competition. I did enjoy seeing this new competition as well, and the directing of it was great. Glad we got to see Amy struggle a bit too. I hope Nathan is in the majority, if not all, of the rest of the episodes. The part I did not enjoy was the Caleb and Amy stuff. They have good scenes just as friends, even in this episode. The only thing I'm glad about is that they addressed it and Amy shut it down, so we hopefully don't have to deal with this again. I got major secondhand embarrassment when Caleb went in to kiss her and when he said he had feelings for her. But I'm glad they worked it out like mature adults and are still friends. This whole episode, I just kept thinking, go away, Caleb, because I knew exactly what was going to happen. I like Katie's plot too. We actually got a Lisa and Katie scene, which is nice. Don't like it will lose away, but at least we get Lisa and Katie scenes. I'm glad Katie finally took a stand for herself and stayed true to who she is. She's pretty mature for her age, I will say that. Usually people that age go with the group to fit it, but I'm glad she didn't. I do like Brandon, so I hope we get to see more of him. Something random was that I thought they were never going to say where Lindy was the whole time, but then they did, which surprised me. I'm very excited for next week's episode as I think it has to do with Lou's past. And last but not least, Stephanie said, besides the Caleb and Amy moments, I really enjoyed the episode. As long as we ignore the fact he kissed her and she had to turn him down. Although I'll give him some points for handling the rejection well. I really enjoyed Lisa and Jack's storyline. It was enjoyable to watch Lisa kick butt while playing pool. That was a really fun scene. It was nice seeing them do something fun and out of the norm. And we got to hear more about Lisa and Dan's past, which was interesting. I loved the directing this episode. Michelle did a fantastic job, as always. I love the opening shots with Katie riding the dirt bike and Amy riding Clue. And the music choices this episode fit really well. It really made the scene. The shots of the landscape, too, were just beautiful. It was nice seeing more of Nathan Price this episode. I enjoyed the banter between him and Amy. I really want them to continue the storyline. I did think it was sweet that he gave her tips for the second round of the competition, which helped her in the long run. I think I detected a hint of disappointment when he thought Amy was involved. He looked a bit relieved when he found out she was single. I'm so proud of Katie this episode. She's making friends without compromising who she is. I love that she didn't give in to peer pressure and was confident enough to stand up for herself. I'm glad that the guy came back and apologized for not backing her up. Hopefully he won't hesitate to do that in the future. Thanks for all the hard work, Soile, on the podcast. Looking forward to listening when this goes up. And then on to some of my thoughts. I don't really have a lot to say, but I did mostly like this episode. It was really strange to not have Lou, Tim, and Jessica there because I feel like, especially Lou and Tim, that we are so used to being there most of the time. It definitely always shows what they bring to the show because it feels kind of empty. But that being said, I did like that the story was really focused on these three main storylines, basically. We had Katie's storyline, we had Amy's storyline, and then the Jack and Lisa storyline. As for Katie's storyline, I'm not going to repeat about my opinions about the dirt bike. So I'm just going to say that I liked the second half of the episode for Katie better because it was more relatable in that way. And I'm glad that even though she's not a daredevil, a risk taker, which is a nice contrast to who Georgie is, she's still brave in other ways because taking that stand for herself is really brave. I don't think a lot of people could do that. So I really love that she's showing that there's different kind of bravery in the world, that it doesn't mean that you have to make jumps with the dirt bike in order to be brave. I also really noticed Katie's looks this episode, and I like that it's very personal to her. I like all the little details of it. I like to take notice of these things. So I really feel like she's becoming more of her own character because we've had different versions of her because of the different cast members who have played her in the past. So it's always been kind of like she's gone through different eras and now she's fully becoming the Katie we will end up knowing in the end. And I really think the clothes really build that up just as much as what she does on screen. I think it was HL Horses who said that they were surprised that they actually showed Jack and Lisa post funeral. I mean, we saw them walking back to the truck, so it wasn't exactly about the funeral. And in a way, I don't think we necessarily needed to see that, but I think it really made it more real what they were going through, especially Lisa. So I did like that they showed that little scene with them and then continued there with the bar and the pool table and all that kind of stuff, because those moments after funerals are weird. And I think they really captured that, well, what do we do now? You know, it's weird that someone's dead and we're just supposed to live our lives, and that's that. So I think they really captured that well. And it was nice to see Jack and Lisa out of the house, and I especially loved seeing Lisa kick ass. I mean, she was just adorable, being like, I've played a few times, and you can totally see what's coming, but you still kind of get a kick out of it. So I did really like that one. I also really liked learning a little bit more about Dan and Dan's relationship with Lisa. We only got to see them dealing with business most of the time, some tender moments, but I never really understood why someone like Lisa would be with Dan. But now hearing more about Dan, it's like, oh, okay, so he was a different person when they started out, and it makes more sense why Lisa would be drawn to him or maybe even enjoy his company. So it is nice that we are sort of getting that stamp on Dan to understand their relationship a little bit more before we say goodbye to it for good, I think. I also really like the scene with Lisa and Katie in the kitchen, where Katie's talking about what she's currently going through, and Lisa's there to listen and give her support and some advice. So Katie feels like she has someone she can talk to, but at the same time, Lisa has someone who helps her get her mind off of, what she's going through. It was also really interesting that Katie was the only one at the ranch. As soon as Jack and Lisa left to the funeral and left Katie by herself, and she was like, I might just do some writing or something. I was like, oh, is she gonna, invite them over, or what's gonna happen? And initially, that was not what was going to happen. It was just a dirt bike thing. But then Ellie and Brandon came over, and it was like, oh, something's going to happen now. But I'm glad it didn't really go overboard. Like, there were a little bit of tension, but it wasn't like the place would be wrecked when they came back and then Katie would get in trouble or anything like that. So I think they did it nicely, because it doesn't always have to be very chaotic in order for the story to kind of deliver what you're supposed to see. As for Amy's storyline, I do enjoy seeing her out of her element a little bit. I mean, obviously, she was sort of in her element with the horse story, but I don't think we see Amy alone a lot. There always seems to be someone there to kind of back her up. So seeing her in the motel, at the party, and then at the competition, it was like she was on her own. And I think that always brings good scenes, because she's out of her comfort zone, and that's when things get interesting. I did really enjoy Amy and Nathan's scenes, especially in the truck. They were driving to the competition and then as they were driving back. I think the banter and the chemistry was really good. It felt really natural. And I think while Nathan is still a bit of a mystery, we got to see a little bit more of who he is as a character and as a person. So I'm really intrigued to see what his secret past sort of is. I really hope that it lives up to the hype of this building up to it being something he doesn't want to talk about. I really like seeing how subtle his approach to Amy was. Like, he was obviously interested in helping her, but it wasn't like, I need to make this happen. It was like he was trying to read her cues, but also offer his help to sort of help her relax, because he could sense that she was uncomfortable and she was having a bad day and all that. So I really like how they're building up this relationship between these two characters, and I can't wait to see more. Also, seeing Amy in that motel brought back memories of me being in Canada in some of those type of motels, because our motels and hotels are very different here. So it was sort of nice to see what we usually don't get to see on the show, like when we saw Amy traveling, the scenery, the new people, the new places and all that. I think it really expands the world of Heartland, even though of course we love the usual places, but just seeing that there is more out there and more of these sort of Canadian things that we don't always get to see is fun change of pace. As for the Amy Caleb story, it just felt so awkward. Like, this is the reason I don't watch any love reality shows, because the way they're built, the way you can see that something is coming and it's awkward. I don't like that feeling. I hate that feeling. And that build up to that moment with Amy and Caleb and not knowing how they would do it and what would be the outcome. I so cringy. And obviously it was meant to be awkward. But at the same time, I'm just glad that it's now dealt with, because I don't want any more build up to any of that sort of thing. It also makes me think of that sad moment when you as a woman are friends with someone who's a man, and then at some point you realize that they've kind of been interested in me because they think that something is about to happen between us two, and I have no clue that that's what's going on. Now, obviously, Amy and Caleb have a history together. They've been sort of dating in the past, back in season 2, if you can call that dating. So it's not that simple, but I just felt for Amy in those moments where you've been sort of living this alternative reality from what your friend has been, living. I think they showed that in some scenes, like after Caleb leaves the hotel and then Amy's drive back to Heartland and she's looking sad and all that. You could see that in Amy, but I'm at least glad that Caleb realized that he had made a mistake, because oftentimes we have Amy explaining to the man that I'm not interested, and they're like, oh, come on, you are. You just don't know it yet. And it's very frustrating because that also gives the audience this narrative that Amy was leading someone on and they attach to that. And it's very frustrating to make them understand that just because a character, usually the male character, says this doesn't mean it's the truth. It's their version of the truth, but it's not Amy's version of events. Like, okay, good, Caleb actually understands that he screwed up, and Amy doesn't need to do that whole explanation thing again. But then I didn't like the line where Amy was like, maybe I'm partly to blame because I love you, but not that way. And it's like, what do you mean? Like, you're to blame because you two are friends? What? So I don't think that line was needed. Like, I don't understand the point of that. Like, was the point of that to sort of let Caleb off the hook somehow? But I don't know if it really did. It only made me dislike the storyline more. Anyways, that's that. That's episode 6. Now moving on to episode 7. Episode 7 is called Unknown Caller, airing tomorrow on November 12th. The synopsis says, Lou's forced to face the reason for her insomnia. Amy works with a new client who has a surprising connection to Katie. Jack wins over a prickly Dude Ranch guest. So that's in store for the next episode. And if you're a fan of Jan Arden, she's going to be in the next episode, and it should be interesting to see what her storyline is exactly. But we talk about that more next week. Until then, keep your noses clean and your powder dry, as they say. Bye.